Douglas Adams once wrote, "I may not have gone where I intended to go, but I think I have ended up where I needed to be." How might this quote describe an experience in your life? While getting my degree, I was just taking classes that interested me that also had to do a little with my major. Turns out I was getting my minor in chemistry without even realizing it. I got home once and absent-mindedly threw away my socks for no reason. I just took them off and put them in the trash. When I realized what I did, I dug through the trash only to find out that both socks had holes in them. Turns out they belonged in the trash anyway. I've never found a quote that described that situation more perfectly than this one. I guess maybe you noticed the holes before, but only subconsciously remembered them. I was a certified Ford mechanic. 2008 to 2009 happened, and no work was coming in. Got a job offer to teach auto mechanics in Iraq to the new Iraqi army. As a result, I learned I have a passion for people trying to better their life. I ended up sponsoring my Iraqi interpreter to come to the US. Since then I came back and finished my degree, and now I'm in learning design at an amazing company. My Iraqi brother is now married here in the States to an amazing wife, and they have a kid. He has a great job and is finishing his degree as well. Life can be an amazing journey. Enjoy the ride. Those last two lines are very, very true. In the 90s I lived in Springfield, Demo, and absolutely loved it there. Never wanted to be anywhere else. My wife finished college and got a job in another state not far away. I didn't want to move there but did reluctantly. Within a couple of years, I absolutely loved it there. Made a ton of friends, had a great job, and couldn't imagine being anywhere else. Lived there 20 years and thought it would be where I die. Last year we moved to Connecticut, again for my wife's job, and I love it here too and can't really imagine moving back. It turns out, it's not the place I live, but who I live with that matters. My wife is my home, and where she is where I need to be. Be right back. Need to go hug my wife. Never planned to divorce, never planned to leave Arizona, never planned to remarry, never planned to leave a career I loved, never planned to be hit by a car. I've done all of that in the last 2 years. I completely rewrote my entire life and every plan I had in every way imaginable. Would not have it any other way. My new husband and my new life are a level of happiness I've never known. Seriously, even recovering from a serious injury and everything that has gone with that is better than my previous life because of who I have to love me now. That is one hell over 2 years. When I was younger I used to sleepwalk. I walked straight to the end of the hall where there were 2 doors. One to the bathroom and one to my older brother's room. Opened the door, lifted the lid, and peed. Turns out I had opened the door, lifted my brother's blanket, and peed. Not where I intended, but I finally got back at that jerk for farting on me for years. Not where I intended. Suuyuri. I suffered an extreme trauma that took my legs. I also went through a month trapped in my own nightmares while in an induced coma. Needless to say, it is an experience I would never put anyone else through. I came out the other side of that far more empathetic, patient, and understanding as well. The personality change is so drastic. People that knew me before say I'm an entirely different person. I'm a loving father as this new me. I met the love of my life as this new me. Despite how hard living in this body is, I love life more than ever. If I could see into the past and alter what happened, I wouldn't. The suffering was horrific, but transformative. To become who I am now, the accident must happen. I'm sorry past me, but if I'm honest, you aren't a good person. I don't miss being you. It took several years to conceive our son. By the time he was 3-year-old, we had tried many times with medical assistance for a second. We have up and started an adoption. Well, after we got all the paperwork together and sent off to China, we found out my wife was expecting. Okay, we can deal with that. As my wife put it, what's the worst that could happen? But the ultrasound showed that it was twins. So my kids are 18, 14 and 14 now. It's not what we would have ever planned, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. My cousins also struggled with infertility for several years and started fostering a baby boy in September with plans to adopt him in a few months. 1 week after they got the foster baby, they found out they're pregnant. In April they'll be welcoming a daughter and they'll be eligible to adopt their baby boy. It's amazing how these things work out sometimes. In college it was my dream to get an internship at Harley Davidson. I rode a Harley, worked at a Harley dealer during the summers, and even though my GPA wasn't perfect, I thought I was more than qualified for the job. I still do. I had a preliminary interview with them through a recruiting company and I never even got to the second round. The internship I got ended up being a way better opportunity. It was only a few miles from my parents. I got a free gym membership to the gym next door, and the culture was great. Getting snubbed by Harley was just what I needed. I know someone who currently works for Harley and it does not seem like a great company if it makes you feel better. She was promised all of these great things and an impressive title, but she really isn't doing any of the responsibilities she was led to believe. I wanted to be a teacher. I currently work at a thrift store. Today one of my managers told me how much me working there means to her. I loved my time working at a thrift shop, sorting all the books and the beautiful people who worked there. IDK whether it's the same where you're at, but a lot of lovely older retired people volunteered at the one I worked at. It was such a pleasure to listen to their stories and advice and just let them baby me a little haha. I had no idea what I wanted to be in high school. My dad died sophomore year, so I moved in with my mom and changed school. At the new school I joined ROTC and thought that's what I wanted to do. After high school I applied to University of Hawaii. I got in, but it was too expensive, so I applied for Colorado. Got in. Even more expensive, so I applied to an in-state school. Missed the deadline, so I had to work a food service job for a year. Finally started college and rent was way too expensive, so I applied to be an RA. Got free rent but lost friends. Friends ended up doing bad things and sucking, but I made new friends in the RA job. Almost lost the job because of my grades. Met a girl who helped me get my grades up and introduced me to a cool professor. Really enjoyed the professor's courses and built a great professional relationship. Professor talks up this research lab and I'm like, yeah, maybe I'll do it. Summer of my graduating year, I have no idea what I'm gonna do when I graduate. Professor hits me up and asks if I want to go to the lab, which is on the other side of the country. I decide to take the leap and go. It's a 6-week course, so I figured it'd give me time to figure out what I'm gonna do when I move back home. While there I make friends with the other students and one invites me to go hang at the docks with her. We hang out and drink beer and a new professor walks up and has a beer with us. Dude offers me a job in a different state, 1,000 miles from anyone I know. Frick it, yeah, I'll go. It's whatever. Before I move I see the girl that I met back in college again. I decide we should date. Then I move very far away from her. Now I'm sitting here, working as a marine biologist, about to start my PhD, in a new state at a prestigious university, with my girlfriend maybe moving in with me with plenty of positions in her field near me, earning more than Jay ever thought I would, getting a great story. I feel like this every few weeks when I really help a kid or parent, child psychologist. I must be where I need to be at least some of the time. Still, wish I was a rock star though. You are a rock star to those parents and children. In the late 90s, I was in the Navy and getting ready to transfer to shore duty, so I was calling my detailer. He had orders for me to stay in Jacksonville, or I could go somewhere else. I decided to wait and talk to my wife that night, because she had mentioned wanting to move. When I talked to her, she said to take the orders in Jacksonville. That night, though, there was a huge snowstorm across the Midwest, and the detailers were not able to come to work for a week. By the time I was able to get back in touch with him, the orders were already taken. I had to move to Pensacola, then got orders to Italy, where my wife and I split up and got a divorce. In 2005 I retired from the Navy and ended up in California. I got a great job, which I still have, and remarried. We now live in Texas and have twin 8-year-old girls. I couldn't imagine my life without them. It's not where I intended to be, but this is where I belong. Somehow, getting divorced and retiring from the Navy always seem to go together. In the summer of 2011 I was doing my school placement in Ghana, then had plans to travel to India after my 3 months was completed to visit a friend who was doing her placement there. I am from Canada. I realized right before I was supposed to go to India that my visa was only valid from the day I got it, not from the day I was planning to leave for India, so it was already invalid. I was disappointed but made my way home. The day before I was originally supposed to come home, I was invited out with a few friends that I used to work with. I ended up meeting my now husband. Even though I missed out on part of my trip, I was glad it didn't work out the way I had planned. I don't think I ever would have met him if I hadn't come home early. I wasn't the type to go out a lot, and I just happened to be working less since I was expected home so soon, so I had some free time. Got a job in concert security. Somehow, I'm a tiny, incredibly non-intimidating 5 feet 4 inches female who at the time had waist-length blonde hair. I was terrified and had no idea what I was doing. Anything involving security is not something I ever imagined my quiet self doing, and it really shocks people when they find out. But I gained so much confidence from that job. You have to be pretty assertive to tell a sexist old redneck white guy that his pocket knife is not coming in no matter how much of a tantrum he throws. I learned pretty quick not to take any crap from people like that. Also got to interact with artists and other celebrities occasionally, which is an interesting experience and entirely different skill set. Still no concerts where I am thanks to COVID, but I'll be going back to that job as soon as I can. Man, I don't think I could do security of any kind. Why am I too stressful? Also, I don't want to deal with a bunch of drunk buttholes. I was snuck into a frat party at a university I didn't go to and met the love of my life because he was playing in the band. We didn't see each other again until 5 years later. We dated long distance for almost 3 years and have, finally, lived in the same city for 6 months. I didn't intended to go to that party, but ended up right where I needed to be 8 years later. Might be one of the only good things to come out of a frat party. My husband and I should have met several times at university, but a random sequence of events kept us apart until we were ready for each other. Married 20 years next year. COVID wrecked my plans to move away from my hometown. However, being in this area has provided me with opportunities to get a decent paying job, one I applied for a year ago but didn't get at the time, and to teach classes at a local community college. Very valuable experience as I hope to someday go further in academia. The circumstances that allowed me to get this job were somewhat uncommon, so I was very lucky to have this opportunity here. I still want to move away after a year or two, but for now I'm at a good spot. I ended up failing a class in college and had to hang out for an additional semester to retake it. During that next semester, on my way to class, I ran into a girl I knew from high school and we started talking. Hadn't seen her in about 5 years. This was in 2010. Married in 2013. First daughter in 2015. Second daughter in 2016. And our third just this past June. Thank God I didn't understand organic chemistry. With 3 kids it sounds to me like you understand organic chemistry just fine. And for those who don't end up there, from Random's point of view, this was also all very weird. It wasn't that she wanted to be difficult, as such. It was just that she didn't know how or what else to be. Who was this guy? What was this life she was supposed to lead? What was this world she was supposed to lead it in? And what was this universe that kept coming at her through her eyes and ears? What was it for? What did it want? She'd been born in a spaceship that had been going from somewhere to somewhere else, and when it had got to somewhere else had only turned out to be another somewhere that you had to get to somewhere else again from, and so on. It was her normal expectation that she was supposed to be somewhere else. It was normal for her to feel that she was in the wrong place. Then, constant time travel had only compounded this problem, and had led to the feeling that she was not only always in the wrong place, but she was also almost always there at the wrong time. She didn't notice that she felt this, because it was the only way she ever felt. Just as it never seemed odd to her that nearly everywhere she went she needed either to wear weights or anti-gravity suits and usually special apparatus for breathing as well. The only places you could ever feel right were worlds you designed for yourself to inhabit, virtual realities and the electric clubs. It had never occurred to her that the real universe was something you could actually fit into. I think reading this in my formative years may have been more important than I initially believed. You are missing some important context. Just prior to that, Dirk says something along the lines of, I find someone who looks like they know where they are going and follow them. Then ends that with, I may not go where I intend to go but usually end up where I need to be. This is the holistic part of his detective agency philosophy. I applied this by following the Grateful Dead on the Touch of Grey tour. Straight out of high school, I followed my love of theater into going to university for theater production. After a few years of not knowing when I'd see my next paycheck, and went back to college for business. Turns out I'm no good in a classroom setting, so I left. Now I work at a job I love, a cannabis store, and spend my days with the coolest people, and sometimes help someone get through the pain of chemo or get to sleep after a week of restless nights. But I like to say that I have a useless arts degree, dropped out of business school, and now I'm a drug dealer. My husband used to work for a bank and became miserable. He quit and later became an educator in a medical cannabis clinic. It means the world to him. Glad you've found your place. I spent my whole childhood and early college years with the sole goal of having a child and being a good mother to that child. Early 20s my mental health deteriorated significantly and I started having fears I would pass my mental health problems on to my future child. Early 30s and I have abandoned all dreams of giving birth to a child of my own. I would never want another being to be subject to these feelings I have daily. As of this morning, I am single once again. Not that it matters much to me. I'll find someone someday. Perhaps the next person I am in a relationship with will already have a child and I can be a wonderful stepmother to that child. I've continued along the path of being a caregiver and have finally found the place I belong, hospice. I am a hospice CNA. Sorry mom. Number 4-year college for me. I could work towards being a hospice RN but I would have less time to spend with my patients. As a CNA, I am able to spend time speaking with my patients and their families. I am good at it. I can sense what people need, physically, emotionally, mentally, even spiritually. My greatest fear has always been death after death, but spending time caring for the dying has given me a greater understanding of the process. I no longer fear death and spend my time helping people transition peacefully, knowing that I truly care for each and every one of them. TLDR. Goal in life was to give birth, ended up helping people die with dignity. In 2008, I just started studying for a degree in astronomy and astrophysics. I'd say in general I was enjoying a lot of the work. I liked participating in the classes. A lot of people seemed to admire me for it. I'd get a lot of wow, astronomy? I could never do what you do, etc. But in early 2009, I went through a rough breakup. I had a great relationship with my girlfriend at the time, but she ended up very suddenly deciding to leave me for someone else. I was crushed. I didn't know how to deal with it. But above all, although I was in denial at first, I think deep down I knew I couldn't continue university. Even the train ride into the campus every day reminded me of her. Passing all the places we went on dates, all the locations we'd visited together, etc. It was all too much, and try as I might, I just couldn't deal with it. I ended up making the decision to drop out, which sent me on a very different path in life. I turned to World of Warcraft as a way to deal with my grief. I didn't know how to face the problem directly. I felt completely powerless. I ended up spending almost 3 years of my life where I did almost nothing but play WoW. Heck, I'd wake up to a nice sunset at 5 PM, play WoW through the evening and night, before going to sleep at 7-9 AM to repeat the cycle. Those 3 years were some of the best years of my life, and I regret absolutely nothing from them. I became one of the best in the world at what I did. I formed some friendships online which ended up lasting to this day. Those years brought some of my fondest memories, and I wouldn't trade them for the world. To be fair, I did throw a bit of study in here and there, but it was nothing like I originally thought I'd end up doing. In 2012, at age 22, I ended up finding my first full-time job, and although the job evolved and morphed a bit over time, I'm basically in the same job now. I ended up finding my footing and got into a job I found fulfilling and satisfying, even if it wasn't what I originally envisioned. And to be fair, the hours are probably less weird than they would be if I'd ended up getting a job related to astronomy. My path isn't necessarily the only path, but I guess my message is, sometimes it's okay to fail. Sometimes life doesn't end up how you envisioned it, but that's fine. Things have a way of working themselves out in the end, and we don't always pick the path we thought we would. This story stuck out to me the most out of any others. It really helps me personally as a few things struck a chord deep within me. Thank you for sharing. I tried to work my way through college, but it was too expensive for me. I later enlisted to get money to pay for it. Now I'm almost halfway to retirement, and because of the opportunities afforded to me, I've met my wife and traveled the world. I always wanted to become an astrophysicist as a teenager. After some difficulty with my parents, school life, and neglect, I ran away from home and ended up homeless in Toronto. There were little plans for a homeless kids to go to university, learn a trade or go to college. No programs for at-risk youth to go to university. I met someone who almost managed to bend a few rules to get me into UOF, but was told to try again next year. Then I used all my money to transit to Vancouver. When I got to Vancouver, I immediately began studying more high school and heading to UBC study halls. I braved up and went to their admissions to ask about applying. I was told as my grades currently stood, I wasn't going to get in. I remember crying outside the UBC library. For frick's sake. How was I supposed to get good grades while homeless and juggling social workers and benefits meetings? It was my dream university. The one thing I kept thinking about while being homeless for 2 straight years. Frick you UBC. So I went back to UBC and kept studying. A hot lady dropped all her stuff and I had a moment of frick studying, and I changed my whole life course in a split second. I looked up to the sky wondering if someone had managed to work this miracle. I then proceeded to help her. She was marketing Big Mama textbook rentals to the new students on the first day of university in September. I, for free, helped her market, and when she was done, she offered me a part-time job. As a homeless kids, I'll happily take that. Frick being an astrophysicist, I'll be a marketer. I was to report in on Monday, and over the weekend I got strep throat. Saturday and Sunday were like glass shards. The social worker said that I was the first exception they made to eat food in his room instead of in the common area. One social worker cut up ginger and made me tea. I could hardly talk, and on Monday, I borrowed her thermos, put her tea in, then went off to work on day 3 of strep throat. To my surprise, the CEO of Big Mama was there. Holy mackerel, she was big, tall, round, and loud. She asked me if I was sick, and I remember saying just getting over a small cold. Oh yeah, there's a little something going around. Yeah lady, try some glass shards in your throat. Your job today is to hand out these chocolates and coupons to Big Mama. Oh frick, I have to talk. So I made large arm gestures and looked like a weird flag bearer handing people chocolate and coupons. I apparently did so well. She asked if I wanted a full-time job. I said yes. I worked as marketer for 3 months until I moved to programming. You see, when I was younger, I learned HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and PHP to help with my mom's e-commerce site. They taught me how to program and market, and I later used those skills to become a Ruby on Rails developer. 8 years later, I've sold my first business. I now spend my time trying to help my father fix up his house. No one's prob gonna read this, so after some bouts of depression and alcohol abuse, and some drugs as a teenager, I couldn't hold a job and needed money. Selling sexy pics online turned into camming, which turned into dating sugar daddies, which is a load of crap, so I started sex work. At the time it was good money and I couldn't be fricked doing anything else. I was drinking heavily every night, super depressed, but generally enjoying my work. One night I met this really lovely costumer, just super sweet. We'd play around sometimes and he was always respectful and kind and just a good person. About a month later I found out I was pregnant, got an abortion and slipped into a worse depression. On a dark night I needed help and I remembered that one client that was always there for me. I called him. He came over and held me while I cried. He never left. I stopped sex work a few days later and he encouraged me to go back to school. We have been together for 5 years. I have been sober since that night and we are saving for a house. We have 2 cute as heck dogs and have been talking about starting our family soon. I never thought that I would meet my soulmate doing what I did, but here I am. What an amazing story. More power to you. Hope you defeated depression and are doing well now. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.